I what I said was, and it's the answer to your question, what's this all about? Bigotry, prejudice, it's a part of all of us. We all have that. It's it's part of it's one more dreadful aspect of this thing called the human condition. And the answer to it is to be aware of our own uh, prejudice, our own bigotry, and stand against that.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I get to talk to some of the most amazing people on this show. As author guests, they come on, they share their story, their journey, and they're spectacular people. They've got amazing and interesting stories behind what they do as writers, but also some of the things they've done in the past. And Richard's here joining us today to talk about his books and what he's writing and what he's been doing. But this gentleman's got a rich history, which we're going to touch on. And we're going to try to do justice to all of the things, but there's lots to talk about. Richard, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, I already know the answer to this question, but my audience doesn't. Richard, where are you joining me from today? Where do you live?
I am in Los Angeles, California.
Beautiful.
I grew up in New York. And as I told you earlier, I came to California. I was a graduate student upstate New York. And I just had a few weeks to kill. I drove out here in a VW Beetle in 3 days. And while I was here, I was studying film. I had applied to USC and UCLA. In those days, there was no tradition of moving from the academic community into the professional community, and anybody they were knocking down people in the street to try to get them to enroll in film school. Quite a different story today. The program where I taught as a tenured professor, and I led the program at UCLA in screenwriting for over 40 years. It's actually easier to get into the Harvard Medical School than to get into that program in terms of how many qualified applications there are and how many available slots there are. I like to say that people. I actually wrote another book. We're here to discuss Deadpan, my latest book.
Yeah.
I have another novel I'm working on about a guy who is struggling to write, and but it's not this Deadpan is actually my third published novel. I have also three books on screenwriting, the third of which, and they've been in print for like 35 years. The last one, the most recent one, if 15 years ago can be called recent, is actually quite a success in its Mandarin edition. In China, I'm selling like 1,000 books every month in China, and I've just closed a deal with a Russian publisher. They're going to put it out there in hardcover later this year or early next. But I never expected to be a writer. As I said, I suddenly I was studying film, and while I was here, I visited the USC Film School. It was very easy to be admitted in those days, as I say, and it was a magical moment. My classmates were the first group really to move from the academic community and to take over Hollywood, except for one. He did not come to own Hollywood. I'm talking about George Lucas. He came to own Marin County up north, but it was really a magical place back there at USC in the mid '60s and the late '60s. George was just one of I mean, he's the most notable for sure. But there were many other artists that went on to substantial success. We call that the Lucas era, except that George calls it the Walter era. I'm just kidding. I'm just. Then I found myself writing. I had never expected to be a writer. When I look at my early, my college papers and so on, I was a history major. I'm not terribly encouraged by the writing that I see, but there I was in a screenwriting class at USC, and I wrote how to write a feature length screenplay, and I did, and I never sold that script. But a lot of people don't understand when a script doesn't sell, it's not the end; it's just the beginning. You can get development deals on other projects. You get rewrite assignments and all other kinds of rewards. And then a script can sell way down the line. Unforgiven, which was the best screenplay Oscar and best movie, maybe a quarter of a century ago. Clint Eastwood, he had that script in his office for 20 years at Mel Paso.
Wow.
And Deadpan, my current novel from Heresy Press, I actually thought it up like 50 years ago. My favorite expression about Hollywood is from Dorothy Parker. She said, Hollywood is the one place on earth where you could die of encouragement. I had so much encouragement over the years for Deadpan. What I never had was a nickel, in compensation or a contract to sign for its publication. And I got up during the pandemic, during lockdown, shelter, in place. I had a call from somebody who had read Deadpan almost 50 years ago, who was wondering what had happened with it, had anything come of it. And it occurred to me that if he's thinking of this thing after all this time, I ought to take another look.
Nice.
And so I did. And I ended up rewriting it and then trying to submit it. I say trying to submit it because I have this may be of interest, or they may already know this. The authors who might be watching and partaking of our session, that a terrible plague has fallen across publishing.
Right.
My last novel was a Los Angeles Times bestseller. It earned out its advance in its first printing. It went to multiple printings in cloth and trade paper. And no agents, including my own agents, would even respond to a query about Deadpan because it deals with a very difficult subject, racial and religious identity. It's really a funny story about an unfunny subject, which is hate speech and bigotry, in particular
Mm.
anti-Jewish bigotry. And I'm here to tell you that I made 50 submissions, and I only had 3 responses at all. That is to say, 50 queries about making a submission, and only 3 responded at all with polite turndowns. I happened to read about Heresy Press, which was a new venture started by my editor and the founder of that publisher, Heresy Press. His name is Bernard Schweitzer, my hero. And only after a few months, and Deadpan is their first novel. After
Wow.
just a few months, Heresy was acquired by, became an imprint of a very big New York house, Skyhorse Publishing, and it came out again in hardcover there. It's going to come out later this year or early next in from an Irish publisher. I read in an article, an interview in the New York Times with Bernard Schweitzer of Heresy Press, the founder, about all that they were trying to put out books that made people uncomfortable. As a
Mm.
professor at UCLA for many, many years, these days what I hear is everybody's got to be comfortable in a classroom. I always regarded it as my job to make people uncomfortable, to provoke them,
Right.
disturb them, and upset them, and get them to think for themselves, not just to communicate data, but to what inspire them into being critical thinkers and commentators. And what was I teaching? Screenwriting. The last thing you want in the audience watching your movie is for them to feel comfortable. You
Right.
walk by a movie theater and suddenly the doors open and everybody's streaming out. The movie has clearly just ended, and let's say they're all sobbing, they're just weeping.
Yeah. Right.
Would you say to yourself, "Oh boy, everybody's going, I don't know what that. I got to find out what that picture is. Make sure I don't see it." No, you'd get in
Yeah.
line right there to see that, because that's really what art is about, especially narrative art. It's about making people feel something. And you
Yeah.
and you don't need to make them feel good. Scare them half to death and upset them, make them angry, anything. But we only have one rule at UCLA: 3 words. You can do anything you want, but don't be boring. Sim,
Mm,
simple as that, easy to understand, but not easy to achieve.
right.
Deadpan, if I was still on campus as a professor, I would say Deadpan is an homage uh, to Franz Kafka.
Mm,
But since I am retired now, I'm going to say that I stole Deadpan from Kafka. The Kafka wrote a story, a legendary story, 100 years ago, um, called "The Metamorphosis," in which uh, a man wakes up one morning to discover that he's an insect or a beetle or a cockroach, some kind of bug, depending on the translation from the German. And I was wondering, gee, what else could somebody wake up as? What if you woke up one morning and discovered you're a fern? Well, that doesn't sound too it. So how about a rhinoceros? That's a little better than a fern. But even better than that, I thought would be, what if you wake up one morning and you're the world's most famous, most loved stand-up comedian? And since so many comedians are Jews, I decided to make it a
okay.
Jewish comedian, and since I love conflict, and I've always preached that to my students that it's all about conflict, not people getting along, but not getting along. I made the protagonist, whom I call Dwight Bridges in that life, in his regular life. He's a failing. It's 1973. There is war in the Middle East. Sound familiar? The Yom Kippur War,
Hmm. Right.
and gas supplies. Oil supplies have been disrupted, and Americans and everybody else are waiting in line at gas stations, and some people were starting to blame the Jews. And it was the first time that I really encountered anti-Semitism. So I decided to make this guy a failing Buick dealer. Nobody's buying Buicks. It's
No.
1973. It's the gas crisis, and he
Right.
suddenly wakes up as a Jew. He spends a day in the life of a Jew, and not just any Jew, but the world's most famous stand-up comedian. And that's really how the whole thing got started.
It's interesting because when I hear comedians talk about comedy today, getting up on stage in front of an audience, they're having a hard time struggling to pull together a set. Where back in the day, you could get up and your comedian was meant to push your buttons. He's meant
Yes,
to have some kind of feeling. The last thing you want in a movie is to have somebody walking around with a stick poking people to tell you the movie's over because you're just so comfortable and you've fallen asleep, right? You want some kind of feedback. You want some reaction
yes,
so
yes,
that it's memorable, right?
yes. I quite agree. I quite agree. It's a um, the life is driven by two forces. One is intellect and thinking, the
Yeah.
brain. The other is emotion, feeling, the heart, and not only the heart but the belly and the groin. And we tend to think as humans that everything breaks down 50-50, but it's not that way. Emotion is like 98% of the motivating force
Right.
that drives us. And I think that uh, all of the great dramatic narratives, whether they're in literature or in film or in stage plays or any storytelling medium, they make us feel passionate about something, the author's passion, and it's not something good. It's usually something bad. There's a myth among many myths about Hollywood, which is audiences demand films that have happy endings. It's just not true. Successful films have had horribly sad endings again and again and again. Um, it's a way I think that we rehearse for the despair and the disappointment, the frustration that we're going to inevitably experience in life. It's my experience to know some of the most successful, the richest, the most highly acclaimed people in the world. But now, and usually vastly happy people, but not one of them has avoided loss
Right.
and disappointment and heartache and grief in one way or another. And I think if we've had that in a simulated situation like a movie,
Mhm.
and then we get it again in real life, as inevitably we will, we have the experience of having been through it and survived maybe will, and help us survive it this time too. So I really think it's a biological enterprise. If we don't get our culture, we don't get our narratives, we become undernourished in our spirit and our soul in the same way that the body becomes distended and warped if it doesn't get the proper nutrition. So movies, art is important. Years ago, I remember one of the campaigns for president. I think it was Mitt Romney said that the first thing he would do if he was elected would be to close the National Endowment for the Arts. Sound familiar? Uh,
Hmm.
he said that he loves art as much as the next guy. I'm not sure that's true. But when things are tough, and there was an economic crisis at that time, you have to save the money for what's important. And my
Mm.
point is that art is important. It's not just
Right.
an add-on, like you get you get some special option for your car. It's absolutely necessary for the fulfilled, integrated human life.
Right. Yeah. It's the wheels, it's the steering wheel, it's main major component to that vehicle. And without it, you're not going anywhere. So I agree with you on that wholeheartedly. When you look at 2025 in the entertainment business and people trying to find their way and tell stories, what's changed? What are you seeing that makes you cautious, maybe excited, but maybe cautious? What are
Well,
you
these are not
feeling?
mutually exclusive enterprises. You can be excited and cautious.
Hmm.
I frankly, I think this is the greatest time ever.
Yeah.
The studio system is changing, and I think that's because of the technology. Um, and what I'm talking about is there used to be when I was growing up, there was six television. I actually was born in the radio era. But when I was young, TV came in, and they were like, because I lived in a big city, New York, there
There
were
you go.
six television stations. Now there's like a million stations, so to
I
speak.
know.
Every website, is kind of like a channel, and so there's much more. The two big changes I think that have come is first of all distribution. Everybody can has in his, her, or their pocket a device that'll connect you to distribute whatever you have to the whole world.
Right.
The other big change is the collapse of production costs. That same device in your pocket can make a movie. A New Zealand writer sent me a movie that he made entirely on his phone. I'm telling you, he spent $10,000, a feature-length movie. This movie looks like there's no movie stars in it. You can't, afford to pay them that, but it
Yeah.
looks like like a Hollywood movie. So there's the chance for people who want to make movies. There's much more opportunity. Nothing can really stop you, unlike years ago. And for audiences, there's just more and more alternatives to choose among. What is freedom, if not the ability to choose among alternatives?
Right.
Um, I also think, American film, and I'm pro America. I'm so glad to have been born here, and I love my nation. American films have really been world films. I have traveled all around the world over the years, consulting, among other things, giving master classes, but also consulting with uh, International Film Development Corporation people in various nations, and they all want to know the same thing. Back when I was doing this kind of thing, which is how can we get our films distributed internationally? In
Hmm.
films made outside the United States, only one in 10 was ever distributed outside the country of its origin, whereas all American movies were shown internationally. Some even only internationally. They couldn't get a domestic deal, but because they were American film, everybody wanted them abroad.
Right.
As an American and as a guy in Hollywood, go USA, US. But the fact is, my bride and I, my bride of almost 60 years, we watch something every night, pretty much, and we've seen stuff from Korea and Indonesia and
Right.
France. I mean, what's all over the world? What's wrong with that? I think that's a terrific influence. The last thing I'll say about this, because everybody's so pessimistic, is AI. I think I there's no first of all, there's no stopping artificial intelligence. You can't stop
No.
progress. You know, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody who was a member of the Teamsters Union. Why are they called the Teamsters? These are the truck drivers. Well, because they used to be, when the union was formed, they were driving wagons that had teams of horses in front of them.
Right. Yeah.
Along comes the internal combustion engine, and it puts out of
Yeah.
work all of those blacksmiths, who used to do the horse
Yeah.
shoes and so on. Um, the driverless cars, come on. My grandchildren are not going to be driving cars. They're going to get into their car, hit this button. The a bunch of locations will come up where they've been before. They'll hit the button and it'll take them there. People say that will put out of work cab drivers, Uber drivers, truck drivers, and so on. Well, should we have stopped the internal combustion engine because buggy whip manufacturers got
Right.
you can't stop that. I think artificial intelligence is actually a terrific tool, kind of like a super sophisticated spell check,
Yeah.
or grammarian. There are various sites that will give you help with your grammar
Yeah.
and so on.
Right.
I tell you, as a professor at a university, among the things I had to write were many, many reports, the progress of the department at this time or another, evaluations of colleagues who were up for promotion. AI is the perfect tool to write a first draft of that I subsequently edit.
Hmm.
So get out of your own way and stay open to the surprises and the changes. And instead of shunning them and fearing them, embrace them, welcome them.
Right. Yeah. And do you have any concern that AI is going to have an impact on actors and writers and movie houses and all of that creative process? Because I've heard of an AI person, it's not an actual human, that does content online, and there are people wanting this AI to then be an actor in a movie. And when they show this, they ask the AI to show me do a blood curdling scream like you're afraid in a horror movie, and they can't. They can't do passionate weeping as a human, right? Because they don't have every piece of it currently. But I would think that AI is the dumbest version of AI currently. It's only going to get more and more in depth, and it's going to learn more and more over time. But are you just concerned that maybe actors are a little bit worried that
Well, I mean,
AI is there?
the actors and writers kvetching, worrying is our favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, the as I say, you can't get the law to compel people to not use technology.
Right.
I've seen a friend of mine, a director, another classmate of mine from USC Film School, classmate of George Lucas as well. Randall Kleiser, he directed Grease and a bunch of other very very successful movies. Randall sent me a clip and it's two pilots, military pilots in a fighter jet. They're talking to each other, technical talk, Vector 963, stuff like that. And it
Yeah.
shows visions outside the plane, the sky and the ocean that they're flying over, and the plane swooping and diving and doing this and the other thing. There's no actors. There's no dialogue. There's no camera. It was all done, at a keyboard, described. And Randall was saying he's really afraid of that. I understand being afraid of that, but you don't have control over what you don't have control over. It's funny what you say about emotion. I think emotion. People are worried. I'll tell you that years ago I read like 50, 55 years ago, I read a story. in a magazine, a short story, and it was about what are now very primitive computers. They had built up a tremendous network of during the Cold War. They had to build up a substantial network of computers that are all connected to each other in the Western Hemisphere, the American bloc, and then the Soviet bloc
Mhm.
has a similar but separate uh, enterprise. And somebody organizes the combining of the two things. If they could connect these things up, they will be smarter than anybody on the planet, which is, of course, what's going on now, right? And so they have a big ceremony where they actually have a peace treaty, a peace conference, and they come to agree to combine, to connect these things. And they have a ceremony where the engineer who designed this connection has a switch to pull, which will make that connection. And so he does indeed. He pulls it. There's a lot of people around. You know, it's an international event that's being celebrated. And the thing lights up. It starts to hum and buzz and purr. And because he is the guy who led the connection, the campaign to make this connection, he's allowed to ask it the first question. And he types in the question that everybody has been asking from the beginning of time, which is there a God? And the
Mhm.
thing purrs and hums and clicks, and then it spits out a an answer on 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 a piece of paper, and the answer is there is now. And the guy looks at
Wow.
the thing and he reaches for the lever to disconnect it, but before he can get his hand to that, a bolt of lightning comes from the sky and welds the thing shut.
Yeah.
The computer's taking over the world. Now, people are afraid that that's going to happen with AI. I have a feeling that if that happens, um, that might be the greatest thing that ever happened in all of history is to get rid of emotion. Look, what's going on right now in the Middle East. That's hasn't
Yeah.
broken out. That's what it's been for thousands of years, and not only in the Middle East, but all across. What's broken out from time to time is a few years of peace and tranquility, Pax Romana, for example. But
Yeah.
it is the nature of humanity to make war against each other, to treat each other so cruelly.
Mm.
And I believe that that comes out of emotion. We are afraid. The human species. We go back. Anthropologists and biologists tell us to a particular time in a particular place, and that particular time is 300,000 years ago. And the
Hmm.
place is the Great Rift Valley of West Africa. And the greatest danger that people have faced since then is to be attacked, annihilated by some group of people from the same species. There are 500 species of animals, of
Hmm.
mammals,
Yeah.
but there are only two that make war, that form groups within the species, that make war upon other such groups, annihilate them, enslave them,
Right.
and just try to destroy them. Just human beings and chimpanzees do that. Humans
Hmm.
and chimpanzees share 98% of the same DNA. So there's a fear, the greatest danger beyond since the beginning of time, the big dangers were starvation, famine,
Right.
disease, and being annihilated by some members of some other group. And the only defense against that was to be yourself a member of a group. And this is where families and tribes and nations
Yeah.
all occur. And when we
Exactly.
get afraid of some other group, the fear takes over, and intellect and reason go to go somewhere else. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that if AI takes over the world, it won't be the kingdom of paradise. I just don't know. What I do know is that there's no way to know. The only
Right.
thing you know for sure is that you don't know anything for sure.
Right. Yeah. And I guess my whole stack of encyclopedias don't really hold much value anymore because there's the internet and there's all of that. Right. So there's change. Change happens.
Yes,
And something we hold dear and something we hold true can change over time. So you need to understand that.
yes, and you can't stand against it because your self-interest holds. I mean, it's a self-defeating enterprise. If to do that. It seems to me.
Yeah. So beyond teaching and having your students in class and helping them find their way to do what you know how to do, what other things have you worked on in your past that bring you joy and make you smile when you think back on these things? Projects you've been a part of, other things that you've been part of your background. Can you share a little bit?
Sure, I am. There's no. The Wall Street Journal profiled me like 40 years ago, and they called me then. What did they say about me? A writer of substantial professional experience throughout the industry. I mean, I've written screenplays, and there's no kind of literary laundry that I haven't taken in. In my early days, I was in the freelance screenwriting market, and I did very well. Most of the movie, I was hired to write a lot of movies at Writers Guild, scale, plus. Writers are not allowed to, we're not supposed to say this, but even just scale is pretty generous. And I was making better than scale. At that time, the studios were changing hands. And in the middle of all of my not all of my productions, but no small number of them, there would suddenly be a change in management. And my producer would, in effect, be fired. I would be paid off, and I would have to I've finished the script, but they're not going to develop. They're not going to spend millions of dollars developing making a movie based on presented to them by a producer that they just got rid of. And so that's the experience. A lot of writers, very, very successful writers, far more successful than I, nevertheless have all kinds of movies that they wrote that they got paid for that never got made into movies. They're just
Yeah.
screenplays. I did. George hired me to write the first drafts of American Graffiti. I'm not credited. A lot of people. There's nothing unusual about a lot of writers being paid to work on a picture, and not all of them getting credit. Credit belongs the authority for credit belongs to the Writers Guild. And there were many drafts after my own, and three other writers, and if it were written today. If it were produced today, it would say at the end, additional literary material provided by, and then
Yeah.
my name. But I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
I was well paid for what I did. I became sort of my first novel came out around that same time. It was an adolescent coming of age story set in New York City. Kids singing doo-wop in the streets in the late 50s and making a demo and not being able to find a label, but they
Yeah.
singing in harmony. They learned to live in harmony. I with that and the first draft of Graffiti. I became the go-to guy for adolescent coming of age stories, and I was really quite busy. Of course, it's herky jerky. Writing is not screenwriting in particular. It's not a 9 to 5, 52 week
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And what writers have to understand is that every writer is an independent entrepreneur, a businessman, a businesswoman
Hmm.
who and every business has what? Inventory. We're the
Right.
only business that can create our own inventory, and that's what we need to be doing. When things got quiet from time, I'd be working and working. First of all, don't spend the money. I always tell my students at UCLA, if you make any money, don't spend it. Always assume it's the last money you'll see, because the one thing you need to buy is time so that you can, on your own, without distraction, without disruption to your schedule, you can create inventory. You can keep writing. And it was that
Right.
time that I sat down and wrote my first book, a novel. I had actually tried to talk George out of American Graffiti. Who cares about your Modesto cornflake white bread life? Let's do New York, doo-wop, Jews. There's
Yeah.
there's a joke. I hope it's okay to say it,
Oh yeah.
which is how do you say "fuck you" in Hollywood? And the traditional answer is "trust me." But in fact, there's another way, which is you say, "We'll make that our next project after this." And I'm not fooling George. He wanted to tell his story. I totally respect that, not my own. But writing it out as a novel wasn't really very smart because the novel, the fiction market is even crueler than the screenplay market. But it did. It sold right away to a major New York publisher. And the lesson there is don't be smart, be stupid. It was the film rights was sold to a major studio. I got the adaptation assignment. As I said before, all kinds of benefits can derive from the script that gets written, but doesn't sell. Um, then I was not looking for, I'm a graduate school dropout. I never finished my degree, and I was not looking for work. I was very, very busy in the late 70s working at the studios. But when the first novel came out, it led to quite a lot of assignments. And was at a party in Malibu where I got invited to join the faculty at UCLA. Again, I was not looking for work. I didn't need it. But I think that the successful people I know and that I know of, they generally answer every question with yes. It starts with yes. So I thought I would try it out. And I remember the chairman. I said to the chairman when I came on board there that I'm afraid, that it'll interfere with my writing. I won't be, am I going to, is the university going to tolerate me having a career on the outside as a writer? And he said, no, the university won't tolerate that. That is to say, they won't merely tolerate it at a research institution like the University of California. They require that you have an outside life. Teaching is very
Wow.
important. That's your second priority, but your first important is your first task. Your highest priority is your science if you're a scientist, your
Hey.
scholarship if you're a scholar in the humanities, and if in my corner the arts, it's your creative activity. And I found that I was actually busier. I was writing better. I was writing more once I was at UCLA. It taught me to schedule my time more efficiently. And then I learned so much. I've taught so much over the years, but I've learned much more than I've taught. And my teachers were my own students. And when I am writing, I'm often, and I come to some issue, I want to include something, but I'm not sure it belongs. I imagine that I'm a student,
Yeah.
and the other me is talking to me. I would be telling myself, no, you don't know, you don't need that. Save it for your novel. Lose that. It's been a great blessing for me. I got to work with the fantastic writers. If you're working with writers, if you're a teacher and the people you're teaching are not that talented, it's still very fulfilling. There are people who think that creativity is important, and they're reaching and stretching and taking risks. You gotta welcome that. But even better than that is having, if you're, my father was a musician and he was primarily
Hmm.
a performing player, but he also taught at Juilliard, the world's most famous music conservatory.
Yeah.
And he said, if you're going to teach artists, best to have the best artists, and that's what we got at Juilliard, and that's what we had
Nice.
at UCLA. 13 or 14 or 15 students writers who studied screenwriting at UCLA wrote pictures for Steven Spielberg, just for Steven. It's really quite astonishing how successful they are, and what a privilege for me to work with writers of that. Who, as I challenged them, they challenged me. So it's a win-win situation. And now I'm really in. I've retired now from the university. It's getting on like 8 years, and I really am more in the literary world than in
Right.
the movie world. And
Yeah.
I'm hearing about changes that I don't really know about. I would need to learn about if I were going to do that, about
Right.
pitch decks, series proposals.
Yeah.
Things have changed. If the showrunner is now really the head of of TV. And TV isn't really TV; it's streaming, it's cable. It
Yeah.
really is a whole new universe. But it's nothing to be afraid of, except in the sense that anything that's new is a little scary because it's well because it's new. It by definition it's unfamiliar, and we're afraid of the unfamiliar. I saw your sweet little dog there a moment ago. He,
I'll walk by.
the
Yeah.
dog, might once it knows somebody, it treats you nicely. But if a stranger comes up, maybe she barks.
Oh, yeah.
Again, familiarity is important, and we shouldn't. It's comforting, but we shouldn't be looking for comfort as artists. Art is about the discomfort, I
Right.
believe.
Yeah. And that brings us back to your book again. Like that's an interesting premise for your book. For a reader picking up Deadpan for the first time, any like love letter to a reader from the author to the reader before they read the book, they have it in their hand, they're going to read it for the first time. If they had a few moments with you at a coffee shop to talk about this book, any special message you have for them apart from what we've already discussed together?
Yeah, in Deadpan, what happens is this guy discovers his bigotry. He's a Gentile who's suddenly living as a Jew. He got involved in at the time of the oil crisis. There was this outbreak of anti-Semitism that I mentioned, and it wasn't arson and burning and murder and so on, but it was like spray painting the epithets and so on.
Yeah.
I remember reading about. I mean, I'd never heard about such a thing. I grew up in New York. I didn't realize there were people who aren't Jews. Not exactly, but certainly I was in a Jewish community. My own personal group. Actually, New York is really a Catholic city. There's many more Catholics than there is any. The only Protestants are black people.
Yeah.
The most of the white people in New York City are Italians and Polish and Eastern
Yeah.
European, Irish,
Yep.
and so on. In any event, this guy. So suddenly here is anti-Semitism that I read about. They had spray painted on some oil tankers. Um, Burn Jews, not oil. Dump
Mm.
Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, the Jewish Secretary of State at that time. And this guy gets involved. He has our protagonist, the Buick dealer, is an amateur musician, and he gets together every week to rehearse some Dixieland with some pals of his. And this particular night, they take him. He doesn't know what they're doing, but when he gets together with them, they're all uh, involved in a mission, and that mission turns out to be desecrating a synagogue, the local synagogue in rural West Virginia, with spray paint cans. They don't burn it down, they don't hurt anybody, but they do spray paint the structure with epithets, and
Yeah.
he just kind of goes along with it. He didn't invent it. Later on, and by the way, we there's a lot of talk now about stereotypes, groups, identity. The identity of this guy is again changed. He realizes that bigotry is part of being alive, and when the friends, people like me, advantaged, privileged, highly educated, cultured, intellectual people. I mean, I'm a writer and a retired college professor. We don't realize, many of us don't, that we have our own stereotypes that
Right.
we're prejudiced against. For example, rural white sheriffs. So I wanted to have a rural white sheriff who's a champion for justice and and democracy and a fair-minded, decent man. And when he investigates the desecration of the synagogue, the rabbi tells him, "Leave it alone. Don't stir up a lot of trouble. This should be the worst thing that ever happened to our people. Over 4,000 years of history.
Right.
And but the sheriff says, no, 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 no. This is America. This is wrong. We have to. There have to be consequences. So it's a reverse. You'd think the rabbi would be beating up on
Yeah.
the cops to do something, and the cops saying, "Ah, leave it alone." So it's a reverse. And I think
Hmm.
reversals, things that you don't expect, are what you want as a writer
Right.
in your work, whether it's a screenplay or a movie. Now, later on at the end, it switches suddenly to 1979, where the Iranian Revolution, the ouster of the Shah, and the installation of the Ayatollahs, um, that caused another international crisis in oil supplies, and again, gas lines in the states and all across the world. When our guy gets the sheriff is chasing this comedian, this oil dealer around, trying to find him because he knows that he was involved in the desecration of the synagogue, and he finally does catch him. And when he's on trial, uh, the his friends who planned the whole thing, they lie, and they say he planned it. It was all his idea. We don't want to do it, but he made us do it. The reader knows that's not true. When it comes his turn to testify, he lies and says, "Yes, those boys told it right. It was all my idea. Um, they didn't know any better. I shouldn't have done it. It's all my fault." So what has happened to him is he's really become a Jew. He's become the most powerful Jew in all of history. Who's that?
Hmm.
Jesus. Isn't
Hmm.
Jesus? Don't Christians tell us that Jesus took upon himself everybody else's sin, everybody else's fault, everybody
Right.
else's mistakes, and allow them to be saved? It's kind of there's a kind of a circularity to it. And then at the very end, he's left. He's given up his Buick business. He's running a laundromat. He's got a small chain of laundromats somewhere in New Mexico, and suddenly the there's this oil crisis again and gas lines, and he's furious at the indigenous people in New Mexico, impoverished Native Americans and Latino Americans who are mistreating his laundromats and so on, and he ends up suddenly getting involved in he actually spray paints a Chicano La Raza Center or something like that, and suddenly wakes up in a Latino shop, a dressing room, a green room in some kind of a Latino showroom where Latino music, norteño music, is being played in the background, and he's suddenly being introduced as the world's most famous Latino comedian. And I think
Huh.
what I was trying to say there, although I'm never trying to do anything, I don't think you should ever try. You just do what you do, then you see what you did. When I see what I did,
Yeah.
what I said was, and it's the answer to your question, what's this all about? Bigotry, prejudice. It's a part of all of us. We all have that. It's it's part of it's one more dreadful aspect of this thing called the human condition, and the
Hmm.
answer to it is to be aware of our own uh, prejudice, our own bigotry, and stand against that. The problem with Hitler, for example, there's always lunatics and crazy psychotics like that around. The real scary thing to me about a Hitler is not Hitler, but the fact that tens of millions, scores of millions of sophisticated, intellectual, cultured, educated, advantaged people go along with that.
Right.
And
Right.
so we need to be when I look back at my own life, I see all kinds of things that I went along with, um, that I should not have gone along with. I saw people removed from the university without any word from by administrators because they were adjudged to have said the disturbing things. As I said before, this is what we're supposed to be doing, is saying disturbing things as
Hmm.
educators. So I think that's what really what deadpan is really all about. It's about our own particular biases, and instead of worrying about everybody else's, first of all, we should worry about our own, pay attention to our own, and try to avoid acting on them.
Right. Oh,
Stop
Richard, it
going
sounds
along.
good.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm really saying. We just kind of go along with it with everything.
Right. It's a great, Richard. I love the premise for the book. I love the message behind it as well. I love
Thank
a
you.
story that makes you think. Right. I like that. That means a lot as
Thank
a
you.
reader to connect with a book like that and to put that out in the world. Especially, well, it's something that doesn't go away. We're seeing it today. There's a lot of unrest and a lot of people who don't understand each other right now, and it's playing out right now on the news when we're watching every day, right? So a book like this, I think, is timely at any point. I think there's a lot of relevance for the audience.
Thank you. Thank you. I really, I do appreciate that. I do.
Yeah,
I also
excellent.
hope that reading the book you had a couple of laughs, because I was, people have said to me, there's a question, is it fair to treat the Holocaust, racial and religious bigotry with humor? And the answer is yes. It's a terrific way. I think mocking and scorning evil is an effective tool
Mm,
against the dark things in our experience. I still remember a discussion years and years ago on a talk show with Truman Capote, and oh, the other guy was a bigot, Lester Maddox, who was the
mm,
governor of some southern state, and just ranting uh, racial hatred. And when they turned to Capote to respond, he just laughed. He just laughed. There was, what can you say to this? And the laughter, I still remember all these years later, totally disarmed
right.
the opponent. And I do think laughter is really a useful tool. Also, it's a lot of fun.
Right. In true deadpan fashion, do you have a joke for us? Something to make us smile as we head towards the exit here, Richard? Anything that we can comes to mind?
Well, I'll give you a quick one.
Okay.
The doctor says to the patient, I'm sorry, the patient says to the doctor, "How much time have I got?" The doctor says, 10. The patient says, 10, 10 what? The doctor says, 9.
Oh no.
I can't
Run
resist
for the
also
door.
an original joke. I just was talking to some friends about this. People my age, we spend a lot of time at medical facilities.
Yep.
Um, the two differences between being young and being old. The first is that when you're young, you go to the doctor, and when you're old, you go to the doctors. The other difference is between being young and being old is when you're young, you get sick and then you heal, you get better, you recover. So to speak.
There you go. Everyone, there's a little deadpan for you as well. You get a bonus for that. I like that, Richard. That's
Thank
really
you.
good.
I got one more
Richard,
because I
yeah,
want to make a
come on.
point of it. It's a very quick joke. The doctor says, "I got bad news and I got worse news." The patient says, "Well, give me the worst news first." So he says, "Well, it's cancer. It's metastatic. You don't have 6 weeks to live." And the guy says, "Oh my God! And what's the news that's just bad? That's not as bad as that." He says, "Well, you've been diagnosed with dementia. You have Alzheimer's disease." So the guy says, "Oh wow!" And then he says, "Well, at least I don't have cancer." See, now you're laughing, and I've never told that joke to anybody who didn't laugh. What's funny about cancer and dementia? Well, we know people who really struggle
Right.
with this, and the answer is that it's all jokes, and I think writing is all like this. There's text and subtext. The text is what you write or what you
Yeah.
say, and the subtext is what you mean. And
Right.
every single joke is at it. It's a I'm kind of confused, but oh, now I get it. And there's a
Right.
release of stress and tension that comes out as laughter. So once again, we're not evil, dreadful, satanic people to laugh at subjects that are unfunny in the
Right.
context of funny jokes.
Excellent. It's great. Richard, thank you for making us feel again. I like it.
Thank
It's a
you.
great project.
Thank
I
you.
love
Thank
it.
you for having me. I really enjoy chatting with you.
It's amazing. Let's talk about your website, Richard, before we go, because all is great information on there. A lot about you, about the book, and about so much more. Talk about your website before we head out the door.
Yeah, you can find the book. You go to richardwalker.com, or you can go to the usual suspects, Amazon and everybody else. You might even find it in a bookstore if you can find a bookstore.
There you go.
Or you can go directly to Heresy Press. You just punch in my name or punch in the title of the book Deadpan, and it'll come out. I promise, I guarantee, everybody will get a giggle out of it.
There you go. Excellent. That's a promise well kept, Richard. It's a great book, and it's
Thank
great
you
to
all.
talk to you. So great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
As you work on new projects down the road, I'd love to have you back, my friend. Great conversation.
I'd love to come back and visit with you again. You know where to reach me.
Excellent. Everyone, all information, as always, in the show notes for Richard. Go grab a copy of Deadpan. It'll make you smile. It'll make you think. It'll make you laugh. And you might even get angry, but that's fine because that's what we want. We want you to feel something. Richard, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.